So happy Thursday. uh, According to my friend TJ, happy thoughtful Thursday. For me, it's therapy and tarot Thursday. Um, and of course, this is my next installment. So thank you for those that will are joining in chat and that will be watching this on playback. Um, as um we're getting into the holiday season, um Yuletide, Christmas, uh Hanukkah, and Kwanzaa, and all of those festivities for the year. We are in the winter. Well, in a few days it will officially be winter, of course. And this is the colder seasons, the colder times of year, if you will, can be a lot harder for a lot of people who are either grieving, and grieving can be one of many things, right? It doesn't just have to be the idea of losing a loved one, although that's usually what most people first think, right, when we talk about grief and loss and things like that, right? But the truth of the matter is that oh no, where am I going with that? The truth of the matter is that grief can be applied to a multitude of various things, right? Job loss, relationships, friendships, can be lifestyle, can be health, right? And even mental health, and even aging, right? So there's so much that one can grieve, right? And so there really is no measurement to, which is worse. It's grief is grief, right? Welcome. Thank you for being here. Yeah. And so it can be very easy to judge someone for what they may be going through. And especially if it doesn't look like or mirror what you've gone through. And even if it does, the way we handle our grief isn't going to be the same for everyone, right? And so that's kind of why I wanted to do this topic today, why I wanted to talk about grief, because I feel like it's such a universal thing that we all can experience, but also, depending on what it is that you're grieving, can be very personal, right? And that's not to negate anyone who is grieving. Good, thank you. How was yours? So we're talking about grief, right? And exploring grief in a way that honors it without letting grief itself take over, right? So I do have a tarot spread that I did formulate that I would like to share with you, but we'll get into that, right? I want to first just touch on a few things in regards to grief, and making it clear that grief does not equal dysregulation. Now, if you remember, I did talk about emotional dysregulation, and emotional dysregulation can be a result of, but it doesn't equal, right? And the dysregulation, it could be a multitude of things, right? It depends on the type of person, right? Those that are empaths, those that may have a neurodivergent or have some sort of diagnosis, right? Anyway, also, expression doesn't equal emotional flooding, and containment doesn't equal suppression. And remember that grief, it can really only be overwhelming when it's the only voice in the room. So, one of the things that I want to share, and why this topic is especially personal for me, not just because of the fact that I myself have grieved, am grieving. It's something that I've, being an empath, and very, what's the word, sensitive to the emotions around me. So not just my own, but also the emotions of other people, right? And that can go for, for anybody who's empathic and things like that, right? But thinking about, what happens, because the average, okay, so you lose your job, great, okay, you find a new one, right? Someone dies, well, life goes on, right? But what happens when the grief becomes complex? What happens when the grief is prolonged? So in a case where, let's say, for example, someone passes away, gets into a car accident, loses their job, gets married, gets into an abusive relationship, then has to be isolated, then having to get divorced, all the while watching a loved one, hi, welcome, thank you for being here, and then all the while watching a loved one mentally demise. And then not only do you not get a chance to grieve one thing after the other, not only do you not get a chance to grieve one thing before another thing comes, right? So now it's hit after hit after hit, and you're stuck carrying all this grief throughout the entire process, the entire length of time, let's say to present, right? How does one manage that? Well, when I think about what it's like for me and my grief, and the amount of times that I've had to go through it, still going through it, when do you realize that your grief is no longer in control? It's no longer in the driver's seat. Well, when you're triggered, and maybe the emotion that in that grief that comes up. So for example, let's say I'm triggered and the grief that comes up happens to be anger, right? The emotion that comes up is anger. If I can feel my anger rise and it doesn't spill out, and I still manage to stay present in the moment, that's when you get the indication and the realization that, okay, I'm now integrating this. It's no longer controlling me, right? And making decisions for me. So, what does that look like? Well, okay. It I think about when I talk about the idea of complex grief, when I think about the idea of being an empath and having to always be the one, at least it feels that way, who is anchored, carrying such a heavy load. How do I process that and stay positive? How do I stay in the frame of mind of I am love, and I am to act in alignment with that truth? Because it can be very difficult, right? So it leads me to think about, the wounded warrior, the wounded healer archetype, right? And the embodiment of it. The wounded healer is not always someone who bleeds. It is someone who may have bled. And it's also not someone who is to be constantly subjected to injury either. And so to me, when I look at that archetype as the wounded warrior, the wounded healer, right? If we're thinking about it, spirituality, right? In that sense, is that the wound, once you've gone through and you committed to doing the healing journey, the wounded part becomes something that ends up fading away. Perhaps, sometimes no, turn into a scar, can turn into a chronic illness, right? But the part that I want to make known is that to remember that person who embodies that, the wounded warrior, the wounded archetype, or the wounded warrior or the wounded healer, right? Those are people who know how to hold wounds with dignity. That's the lesson, at least as I see it. That's the lesson that comes out of that journey, right? And having respect for that archetype. So whether it be you are embodying that, having respect for yourself who has embodied that archetype, having respect for those who have embodied that archetype, right? Whether it be yourself, whether it be others, it's to be earned. It's an earned right. Well, it's an earned right for respect regardless, right? But it's something to not shame, in other words, right? Because the wisdom that is earned through the pain is not disposable. And so when we go into and we interact with one another and we recognize, that, when we're moving with love and authenticity. Oh, thank you. Thank you very much. When we move with love and respect and authenticity, we're moving with empathy and kindness and understanding that not everything that we experience in life is going to be a bed of roses. And how we handle it and how we choose to move forward and we interact with one another makes all the difference in how we heal, how we grow, and how impactful the grief will be, or ends up being, for that matter. Right? So, it's looking and also being mindful of that when we are interacting with one another, that we are not taking each other for granted, that we are also learning to hold space and have patience. And knowing that not everybody's journey is going to be exactly the same, right? When I talk about the idea of being a karmic cycle breaker and what that really means, it's not just about, in regards to, how one lives their life, but the choices in which we end up making and the decisions that we make when we're interacting with one another, right? That's right, the understanding too of the law of karma, right? There's the notion that, only if you do bad, karma is going to get you. Well, karma is not, it's not like, that's not what karma is, right? Hi, welcome. Karma is basically the mirror, if you will. So what you sow is what you reap. That's the understanding of karma. So if you put out bad juju out there, well, that's what's going to return to you, right? But it's not that cut and dry either, right? It's there's karmic cycles, there's ancestral karma, right? And so being a karmic cycle breaker means that you have the ability to see and clock cycles as they happen, whether it's in your own life or as you are reflecting back on your heritage, your family line, right? Your ancestral line. A perfect example of this would be abandonment. Let's use the abandonment wound, for example, right? And I know we're talking about grief and not karma, but follow along with me for just a minute. So, the abandonment wound, and I'm using myself as an example, okay? So, my father, and his father, right? My dad has Alzheimer's and dementia, but he's being cared for in a home, as he continues to demise. Mentally, right? And of course that trickles down to the body. And I've watched him deteriorate over the course of 10, 12 years, among a whole bunch of other things. And so yeah, that's prolonged grief. That's complex grief, right? And but one thing I know is that that's how his parents also passed. They both had Alzheimer's and dementia on one side and the other. And in regards to my father and his father was estranged and passed alone. And when my dad got sick, and I I saw the pattern, I knew that because nobody else wanted to do anything, if I didn't step in and my dad did not prepare for this stage of his life, right? That whole idea of, well, when you get older, you're faced with your own mortality, right? Um, and so my dad also was a traveler, was a wanderer. He did the same things pretty much as his father did. The only difference was I didn't abandon my father like my father did his father. And what did that do? Well, that changed the trajectory for my father. He's being cared for now in a long-term care facility instead of end up homeless, dead on the street, right? Why did I do that? Well, because like I said, I'm a karmic cycle breaker. And as far as I'm concerned, I know what it's like to be abandoned. I'm a human being. Why would I let that happen to my father? Regardless of who he was, how he was. At the end of the day, when you're at a stage now where you can no longer fend for yourself, where once a man, twice a child, right? I had to put my grief aside. I had to put my differences aside. I had to put my anger aside and make the decision that I'm not going to abandon him, even though maybe that's what he did to me when I was younger, in many respects. But also, I know that in my later years, if I am to be blessed to reach there, that I would want someone to take care of me. If I happen to have children, I don't want my mistakes to weigh on them to the point where they end up abandoning me when I need them most. So I said that karmic cycle ends now. And I made the decision to do what I did. Did it hurt like hell? You're damn right it did. But on the other side of that, I have a better understanding of myself. I have a better understanding of love. I have a better understanding of boundaries because I wasn't raised with any. Or at least it wasn't, right? I wasn't properly taught that. Um, and I have a better capacity for empathy, a larger capacity for empathy, and a better overall understanding of what it means to operate from a place of love, respect, empathy, and compassion. Anyways, so I just figured I'd put that out there. Now for the tarot spread. So, let's see. Okay, where is my? Okay. Where did I put my tarot spread? Oh shoot, I didn't write it down. Did I not put it here? Oh, I didn't. And now it's on my phone. Okay, so unfortunately, I can't do the tarot spread because I don't have the tarot spread. I wanted to do it with you guys here. But anyways, I will put the tarot spread in the description box for sure. Sorry about that. But anyway, so, but you know what? On that note, what I will do, as I always do anyways, and will do when I do these videos, is, I'm still going to pull some cards and read for the collective, and then of course, yeah, and then we'll go from there. And I will for sure have, like I said, I will have the, I really wanted to go over it with you guys, but unfortunately, I don't have it today. What I thought I had, it's a different spread. It's not the actual spread that I wanted to share with you. So anyhow, but I'm going to draw from, I'm going to pull actually, from the Tarot of Abyss. And this is this deck by Anatorian. So I'm going to pull from that. And let's see what we have going on here today for the collective in regards to grief and you know what? I think what I'll do is I'll do a separate, I'll end up, I have no idea who that is. I have no idea who you're talking about. But I will, yeah, I'll probably do a separate video with the tarot spread. And that might be better anyways, because then it will be top down. So yeah. So we'll go with that. Here we go. Okay, so what do we have for the collective today in regards to ha ha ha, because 7, 8, 9, that's why. And it's actually why was 6 afraid of 7. That's the joke. How do I what? Okay. Oh, that was really quick. Okay. Okay, so the first card that came out is the Eight of Cups. So walking away from pain and suffering that is no longer serving us, right? Sometimes with grief, it can be very hard to walk away, especially if we're in the depths of it. But it's through the grief work, it's through the healing work that we learn how to bring the shadows of our grief to light so that we can heal them, so that we can walk away from the pain. Okay. I want to read the book because I really love the book for Tarot of Abyss. So I'm going to read the book on this card, Eight of Cups. Okay. Okay. Also, right, we just had was it on December the 4th? December 4th was the full moon in Scorpio. No. Is it the full moon or Sagittarius? Hold on. Trying to remember which moon it was. Anyways, we had a full moon on December the 4th. And then now tomorrow is the new moon. So again, walking away, leaving the old behind, letting go so that we can step into the next chapter of our life brand new. This is a karmic year, right? It's the year of the wood snake. It's the year of the hermit. So doing that introspection, doing that shadow work, releasing and getting in tune with our grief and the parts of ourselves that has tainted us, that keeps us stuck in karmic cycles of grief, of shame, of right, anger and aggression that isn't serving us or one another. Leaving that behind so that when we step into our new year, the year of the horse, we are welcoming in good karma. Okay, so the Eight of Cups. Eight of Cups says, she's had enough. The woman pictured in the card is tossing her cup and leaving it all behind. She is moving on, leaving behind a run-down cabin and all of her belongings with it. There is no sadness in her eyes, only determination and courage. A sense of freedom grows inside her with every step she takes. The Eight of Cups is the card of moving on from a situation or place that is no longer bringing you joy. It's the start of a new journey, one that will not be easy since you're now starting from scratch. Isn't that how things would be, especially when we're dealing with grief, especially if we're dealing with grief and job loss or relationship loss, right? Okay. Nonetheless, it can be an interesting one, full of new possibilities, whether it's an actual trip or an inner journey. is for you to decide. One thing is for sure, an old cycle is closing and a new one is beginning. It takes a long time for us to admit when something is not working for us. Perhaps we've outgrown a career or a relationship. Change is never easy, and the unknown is scary. However, you know very well that this change is inevitable and it is coming. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And I'm going to pull from, because I'm really enjoying this deck. This is the Fairy Tale Heroine Oracle. And I feel like this is also, you know, with Christmas being next week. Yeah. So let's see. What do we have to go along with this? What do we have for the collective today? I really love the Tarot of Abyss by Anna Torian, and I think it's a really amazing deck. It's by US Games, by the way, so if you haven't, and if you are into tarot, and yeah, definitely give that one a go. Okay, what do we have now? This is our oracle message to go along with the Eight of Cups here. Let's see, what do we have? What do we have? Okay. Ooh, dragon. Okay, so so we have dragon. And this is, okay, number 4, dragon. Read the book on that one. So to me, this really speaks to that idea of putting down the wounds, putting down the armor, the anger and the aggression that often comes as a mask, as a form of protection, if you will, right? Because we feel or may feel naked without it, may feel vulnerable without it. But the thing is, when we upkeep that, we only end up creating more trauma for ourselves and others, right? So, but also, knowing, revamping, and putting into place the boundaries that are also needed so that we can thrive. So, I'm going to read 4. Okay, so that one is actually in this fairy tale tarot, or sorry, oracle, I should say, rather. Guides. Okay. So suit 3, but this is card 4, guides. Okay. 4, dragon. The dragon is a symbol of might and mystery in so many mythic and folkloric traditions around the world. But the best known heroic sagas seem to require the hero to kill one. Sometimes in European folklore, dragons have a tendency to steal away beautiful young maidens to eat them. But sometimes they're depicted as the fierce but benign guardians of treasure. Dragons don't just guard jewels and great stashes of gold, though. They're also the protectors of sacred groves and springs. Whatever it is that he's guarding, the dragon is the guardian of the threshold that the fairy tale heroine is required to cross. The fierce creature who keeps her from accessing her heart's desire. There's a danger there for sure, because waking the sleeping dragon always carries risks. But the dragon can also be an ally if instead of simply trying to eliminate him, like the archetypal hero seems to prefer, the heroine recognizes him as a source of potential strength. Can she bring the dragon into her community so that something of his power will adhere to her and make her stronger? What's the nature of the dragon who guards the threshold that you need to cross? How will you persuade him to let you pass? So I feel like that really, again, sort of that speaks to the whole idea of grief too, right? Because to me, grief can very much be like the dragon. Nobody really wants to have to grieve or to go through it. It's often very much an ordeal, right? Very much a very much a space for suffering and sorrow and all of that, right? Who really wants to go through that? Nobody, but sometimes it's inevitable. Sometimes it is. Sometimes we have to go through the dark times and the shadows, because it's on the other side that we find exactly who we are. You know, what we're made of, even. Once you get through it, on the other side, you find redemption. You find the strength. You find the clarity and the understanding. Sometimes at the end of it, you end up finding yourself. So does it always end up being doom and gloom? No. Eventually, nothing but light and love. So, with all that being said, I want to thank you for joining me. And if you, like I said, if you're catching this on playback, I will have the spread that I wanted to do tonight linked in the description box for you. And I also, but I will end up doing a separate video that will just be for the spread. And we'll walk through it together, top down, so you can see it in action. So, you know, when I do that, make sure you have your journal with you, and, you know, and come and join me for a grief tarot spread. Yeah. So I want to thank you all so much for joining me today. You know, here on Thursday, to talk about grief, shadow work, and of course the holiday blues, because it is the holidays, and it's the colder months of the year, and, you know, we're all more vulnerable and susceptible to sorrow and loneliness, all of those things, right? No sun, gloomy, it can wear on anyone. So thank you guys for being here, and for listening to me and sharing in my journey with me, because as I always say, I am love and so are you. As I see myself as human, when I look in the mirror, I know that when I look out into the world, there are other humans too. And so, with all that being said, I want you to remember to take care of yourself and one another. And while you're at it, please don't forget about me too. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe. Comment down below and let me know what you think of my videos. And be sure to hit that notification bell so you'll always be in the know when I go live or post my next video. And yeah, and just thank you. Thank you for being you and sharing and having the willingness to live and grow and learn and listen. So, until we chat again, please always remember to check your privilege, mind your magic, and as always, live, listen, and learn. I love you all so, so much. Bye, everybody.